Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever tried to understand why someone keeps living inside your mind even when they are no longer speaking to you? No text, no calls, no explanations, silence. Yet somehow they are still there. You wake up thinking about them, you go to sleep replaying memories. A random song reminds you of them. A place, a smell, even a quiet moment suddenly brings their face back into your mind. And you sit there wondering, why can't I stop thinking about this person? Why are they always in my head when we don't even talk anymore? Well, today we're going to talk about something real, something painful, something so many people experience, but almost nobody truly understands. Because if he's always on your mind without talking to you, it means something, but maybe not what you think. See, the first mistake many people make is believing that constant thoughts automatically mean destiny. They think, if I can't stop thinking about him, maybe he's my soulmate, or maybe he must be thinking about me too. Now listen carefully. Sometimes that is true, but many times it's not about love. It's about emotional impact. Let me explain something to you. The people who affect us the most are not always the people who loved us best. Sometimes the people we think about the most are the ones who confused us the most, the ones who left questions unanswered, the ones who gave us just enough love to stay emotionally attached, but never enough consistency to feel safe. That kind of connection, it stays in your mind for a long time because the human mind hates unfinished stories. Think about it. When something feels complete, you slowly move forward. But when someone disappears without clarity, when someone leaves you wondering, when someone makes promises they never fulfilled, your brain keeps revisiting the story, trying to find meaning, trying to solve the puzzle, trying to answer the question, what happened? And ladies and gentlemen, unresolved emotions can feel stronger than actual love. That's why you can miss someone who didn't even treat you right. That's why you can crave closure from someone who barely gave you consistency, because confusion creates attachment. But let me ask you something. Are you missing him, or are you missing the version of him that you created inside your mind? See, this is where many people get stuck. They fall in love with potential, with what could have been. They replay the good moments while ignoring the bad ones. They remember the sweet words but forget the silence. They remember the attention but forget the disrespect. They remember how special he made them feel, but conveniently forget how lonely they also felt. And suddenly, the man they miss isn't even real anymore. It's a fantasy built from memories, hope, and emotional hunger. Now, I know somebody listening right now is saying, but what if he really meant something to me? Listen, of course he meant something. I'm not minimizing your feelings. When somebody enters your emotional space, leaves memories, creates chemistry, and touches vulnerable parts of your heart, they don't just disappear overnight. Healing doesn't work like a light switch. You don't wake up one day and magically stop caring. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Why is he always on your mind? Is it because he added peace to your life, or because he left emotional chaos? Because those are two very different things. Sometimes when someone stays on your mind constantly, it's because they triggered something deep inside of you. Maybe they activated your fear of abandonment. Maybe they made you feel chosen for the first time. Maybe they gave you attention during a lonely season in your life. Maybe you attached your self-worth to their validation. And when they pulled away, it felt like losing a piece of yourself. Not because they were everything, but because you accidentally made them responsible for emotions you should have been giving yourself. Let me tell you something powerful. Just because someone occupies your thoughts doesn't mean they deserve access to your future. Read that again in your spirit. Just because someone lives in your mind does not mean they belong in your life. Some people are lessons. Some people are emotional mirrors. Some people come to expose wounds you didn't know you had. And yes, some people come to teach you what you will never tolerate again. But don't confuse emotional intensity with emotional compatibility. Just because something felt deep does not mean it was healthy. And here's another truth people don't like hearing. Silence speaks. If somebody wanted healthy communication, effort, and consistency, they would create it. Now, I know life gets complicated. I know timing matters. I know people go through things. But somebody who truly values connection doesn't leave you permanently confused. Effort looks like effort. Care looks like care. Communication looks like communication. Stop translating mixed signals into loyalty. Stop romanticizing inconsistency just because you miss somebody. You know what often happens? People stop talking, but emotionally, one person never leaves. And that person becomes trapped in memory. They check social media. They replay conversations. They overanalyze every interaction. Did he mean this? Why did he say that? Will he come back? Ladies and gentlemen, while you are sitting there trying to decode somebody's silence, life is quietly waiting for you to choose yourself again. Because obsession is expensive. It steals your energy, your peace, your confidence, your focus. But I want you to understand something deeply before you judge yourself. Thinking about someone constantly does not make you weak. It makes you human, especially when emotions were real to you. The problem begins when you start worshiping the memory of somebody who stopped showing up in reality. That's dangerous because now you are emotionally committed to someone who is no longer emotionally available. And that gap creates suffering. Maybe, just maybe, the reason he's always on your mind isn't because you're meant to be together. Maybe it's because there's something inside of you asking for healing, something asking for clarity, something asking to finally understand why you keep chasing people who confuse you, why inconsistency feels familiar, why unavailable love feels exciting. Those are hard questions, ladies and gentlemen. But healing starts with honesty. And let me tell you this, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop asking, why can't I stop thinking about him? And start asking, why did I forget to think about myself? Because while you've been mentally sitting beside somebody who isn't even speaking to you, your own dreams have been waiting. Your confidence has been waiting. Your peace has been waiting. Your healing has been waiting. You deserve somebody who doesn't make you guess, somebody who communicates, somebody who chooses you without confusion, somebody who makes your nervous system feel calm instead of chaotic. Real love doesn't feel like constant anxiety. Real connection doesn't feel like emotional detective work. And the day you truly understand your worth, you stop chasing clarity from people committed to confusion. So if he's always on your mind without talking to you, maybe this is what it means. Maybe your heart is trying to finish a story your spirit already outgrew. Maybe your mind is revisiting a chapter that life has already been trying to close. Or maybe, just maybe, this pain is preparing you to finally choose yourself in a way you never have before. Say this to yourself today. Just because I think about someone doesn't mean I belong to them. Just because I miss someone doesn't mean they are right for me. And just because something ended doesn't mean my story is over. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the hardest battles you will ever fight is the battle between what your heart feels and what reality keeps showing you. Because your emotions will sometimes try to keep alive what life has already removed. And that is why some people stay stuck for months, even years, thinking about somebody they no longer speak to. Not because the connection is still growing, but because the mind keeps feeding on memories while the soul slowly starves for peace. See, the dangerous thing about emotional attachment is this. Your brain does not always separate pain from love. Let me say that again because somebody needs to hear it. Your brain does not always separate pain from love. Sometimes the very person who hurt you becomes the person you crave the most. Why? Because emotional inconsistency creates addiction. One moment they made you feel special, the next moment they disappeared. One day they gave attention, the next day silence. And your mind became trapped trying to win back the feeling they once gave you. That's why you keep thinking about them. Not always because they were extraordinary, but because your emotions got trapped inside uncertainty. And uncertainty is powerful. It keeps people emotionally frozen. You know what certainty does? Certainty allows healing. If someone clearly says, I don't want this anymore, eventually the pain settles. But when somebody leaves little breadcrumbs, when they watch your stories, randomly text you after weeks, disappear again, act hot and cold, your brain stays emotionally alert, waiting, hoping, wondering. And ladies and gentlemen, hope can become dangerous when it's attached to inconsistency. Some of you are not in love anymore. You're emotionally waiting for closure, waiting for a message, waiting for an apology, waiting for proof that what you felt was real. But let me ask you something difficult. How much of your life are you willing to sacrifice waiting for somebody to finally become clear about you? How many nights will you lose replaying conversations? How many mornings will you begin with disappointment because your phone stayed silent again? At some point, healing requires a decision, not a feeling, a decision. See, mature love brings clarity. Games bring confusion. And too many people confuse emotional highs with emotional depth. Just because someone gave you butterflies does not mean they gave you security. Sometimes those butterflies were anxiety. Sometimes your body was reacting to unpredictability, not destiny. Real love is not constantly wondering where you stand. Real love does not leave you emotionally exhausted trying to decode mixed signals. Real love feels safe enough for honesty. And I know somebody listening right now keeps asking themselves, but if he doesn't care, why can't I stop thinking about him? Listen carefully, because emotional attachment is not controlled by logic alone. Your heart remembers experiences. Your mind remembers moments. Your nervous system remembers patterns. That's why certain songs hurt. That's why certain places trigger memories. That's why even after no contact, someone can still feel emotionally present in your life. But presence in your mind is not the same as presence in your reality. You know what happens when you constantly think about someone who no longer communicates with you? Slowly, you begin abandoning yourself. Your energy becomes focused on analyzing them instead of developing yourself. You stop being fully present in your own life because mentally you're living inside a relationship that no longer exists. And that emotional habit becomes dangerous because now your happiness depends on somebody who isn't even participating in your life anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, hear me clearly. You cannot heal while emotionally kneeling before someone who keeps emotionally walking away from you. You cannot rebuild your confidence while constantly checking whether somebody notices your absence. And you cannot become your strongest self while your heart remains trapped in emotional survival mode. Some people think missing someone means they should go back. No. Sometimes missing someone simply means you are grieving the emotional routine they created in your life. Human beings get attached to patterns, to texting good morning, to late night conversations, to attention, to familiarity. And when those things disappear, your mind interprets it as loss. But loss is not always a sign to return. Sometimes loss is simply part of transformation. Let me tell you something powerful. The people who constantly live in your mind often reveal where your deepest emotional wounds exist. If you feel addicted to unavailable people, there may be a wound connected to rejection. If you obsess over people who pull away, there may be abandonment pain inside you. If silence makes you panic, maybe you learned somewhere in life that love could disappear suddenly. And instead of healing those wounds, many people spend years chasing people who keep reopening them. But healing changes your standards. Healing changes your attraction. Healing teaches you that peace is more valuable than emotional chaos. A healed person does not find inconsistency attractive anymore. A healed person stops confusing silence with mystery. A healed person understands that attention without intention is manipulation.